Nature website after the event. In case if you face any issue, do contact my colleague Jana, that will try to help you in the extent possible during the session. So this is just a short recap of where everything sits on the screen, but I'm sure now 1 year into COVID, you are very familiar with how Teams work. So see the chat box, the unmute and mute button, etc., etc. What is on our menu today? As I said, we will focus on a very clear challenge is on the development of practical guidance for SMEs in the agri-food sector and how to help them integrate nature and biodiversity into their activities. It will be structured around 4 main parts. The first part will be focusing on the challenge that we are actually addressing, so a bit of context. We'll then have a series of SMEs presenting the business case for actually integrating nature and biodiversity into their activities. We will then have an interactive session and split into 3 groups to focus in more details in these challenges, but also most importantly on the solutions that are already out there. And we'll finish the session with looking into the way forward and concrete steps and events that are happening already actually in the coming days that SMEs can take to start and progress on that journey. So without any further delay, I'll pass on to Lars Müller from the European Commission that is coordinating the European Business Biodiversity platform for an initial introduction to the challenge that we have today. Lars, over to you.
Thank you, Jerome. Thank you, Jerome, to kick us off so elegantly, and a warm welcome to everybody out there in this webinar. My name is Lars Müller. I'm working in DG Environment in the Directorate on Natural Capital and the Biodiversity Unit, and I'm in charge of this Business Biodiversity platform for the European Commission. And I think you should know by joining us here that this is another step in implementing the European Green Deal, which is our overall sustainable growth strategy that the EU has agreed. And it is actually connected to in total three important policy papers that the Commission came up with under the Green Deal. First of all, it is, of course, contributing to the European SME strategy. We are fully aware as the Commission that small and medium-sized enterprises are the backbone of the European economy, and if we want to organize a sustainable transition, then they will have to be the central pillar of achieving that. So we need to integrate also with SMEs for their sustainable transition. Very, very important. Secondly, we have a farm-to-fork strategy that is meant to design and promote and help the sustainable food sector, including, of course, the environmental dimension and in particular also biodiversity. And thirdly, and for me, of course, most importantly, we have the biodiversity strategy in place since last year, which has for the first time a dedicated chapter or section on the role of business, what business need to do and could even rather benefit from integrating nature, from integrating biodiversity into their decision-making by valuing nature and accounting and understanding also their impacts and understanding also their dependencies on nature. So this webinar is connected quite well to a broad range of issues we are dealing at the Commission. And I think in particular, the valuing nature piece is something where we can also learn now from this exercise. I think everybody in this call or in this webinar should also understand this is not a one-off. We are rather keen to listen and to start further engagement with SMEs in this area. And maybe this is hopefully a productive start already, listening to some pertinent examples of best practice, and then also have some feedback in the interactive session in this call, which is maybe a template for the overall working mode that we try to apply. Look at the front runners from which we can learn, but also listen to those who are still at earlier steps on their journey to really integrate biodiversity and nature into their decision making. I don't want to take more time because it's more interesting to listen to the business examples. Thank you very much for joining us, and next speaker, please.
Thank you very much, Lars, for this very good introduction. And I realized that I actually didn't introduce myself. So I'm Jerome Kishelevich, working with ICF and overseeing the activities of the EU BNB Business and Biodiversity platform, and in particular the activities on mainstreaming. That being said, I'll now pass over to Martin Locke from the Capitals Coalition that will reflect a bit on previous experience of engaging with SMEs. Over to you, Martin.
Thank you very much, Jerome, and welcome to all listeners. My name is Martin Locke from the Capitals Coalition, as you can also see on this slide. Let me briefly talk about why SMEs should care. First of all, why guidance is needed for SMEs and what is the challenge so far. So why should SMEs or business as a whole care about nature? That's, of course, a question you can ask. Lars already mentioned the impacts and dependencies. But more and more, I think it is important to realize that businesses see that nature is underpinning all of their activities. If there's no nature, there's no business. 530 companies already have come to that conclusion in the context of their commitments to help reverse nature loss. 1,200 of these companies worldwide are also taking concrete action to improve their interaction with nature, and 700 businesses worldwide are calling governments to come with ambitious policies on this. So if you're asking where are these numbers coming from, you could go to the website businessfornature.org, which is one voice of business calling for more action around nature, reversing nature loss at this moment. A coalition that came together in the context of the preparation of the 15th COP of the CBD, the Convention on Biological Diversity. And this COP is important because it will create a new ambitious framework for the world to focus on while we all want to improve our relationship with nature. So why SMEs then, you would ask? Well, an important element in the ambitious future work around biodiversity from governments, but also from business, is to mainstream nature into all decision making by business, governments, and finance institutes. That, in fact, is one of the key elements, which is also a recent signal from business to the CBD that yes, the draft framework that now is available, the post-2020 framework for biodiversity that is available, is already developing in the right direction, but it's not ambitious enough, it's not strong enough. So one element that really needs strengthening is all the efforts that we can get in place to support businesses to embed nature in all of their decisions. And this is not a new thing. The Capitals Coalition, or its predecessor, the Natural Capital Coalition, launched a protocol, the Natural Capital Protocol, to support businesses to do exactly this, embed nature in all of their decisions that they are taking. And of course, the protocol is suitable for all geographies, for all sectors, and also for all sizes. That's what we said when we launched it in 2016. At the same time, if you're honest and you look to the practice, it is more easy, of course, for corporates to implement a 140 protocol document than for SMEs. So already in 2016, we, in collaboration with the EU and this platform, but also with companies like EY, we started to develop specific guidances that were targeted and were applicable at the SME level. Not with too many success, I unfortunately must say. The best example in our experience was of Arcadis Netherlands. They developed, and this is quite topical for this event, a guide specifically for SMEs in the agricultural sector, but also this wasn't touching the bar that we wanted as a Capitals Coalition, because on the consistency and the rigor, it fell unfortunately short. This is of course the challenge. If you want to make something which is digestible at the SME level, you definitely need to simplify and standardize it, but you cannot lose the rigorness and the consistency in the system. So far, we haven't succeeded with that, but as mainstreaming is needed more and more, the challenge to develop something suitable for SMEs definitely is there. So I'm very interested to hear from the speakers today how they progress with that, and how we can build on their experience to create something for SMEs that is helpful for all throughout Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Martin, for talking us through that and also reflecting a bit on your previous experiences on this specific challenge. So we'll continue with this part on setting up a bit the landscape of today's challenge with intervention from Dan Jochem Groot from Nature Square, that recently ran a survey on natural capital among SMEs in the Netherlands. Over to you, Dan.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for having me and allowing me to share some of the insights that we recently developed with this survey on SMEs. Some background, what we did is we surveyed just over 400 SMEs that were outside of our warm network. So we really wanted to get a good sample of companies that were not already involved with us one way or another. From that 400 companies, just over 100 responded. And you can see the breakdown in sectors on this sheet. And one first interesting thing is that when you look on how they prioritize sustainability as a whole, what you actually see is that sustainability is very, very important to these SMEs. So in general, they do identify themselves really with wanting to be sustainable. And if we then go to the next slide, we see something else which is quite interesting. That is that the familiarity with natural capital accounting as a concept is actually really low. So although these companies, they do want to be sustainable, natural capital accounting is not necessarily something they're quite familiar with. On the other hand, when you ask them, are you actually doing it? Are you accounting for natural capital? Of the respondents that are familiar with natural capital accounting, actually quite a high number is actually doing it. And also the ones that don't already do it, they actually do want to start on natural capital accounting. So even more respondents than the ones that are familiar with natural capital accounting, when you talk to them, they actually do want to start accounting for natural capital. So I think that's a really interesting insight. Forgive me for going very, very fast. So already to the next slide, I just stick to the highlights. Some other questions that we asked were, what kind of support would you want on natural capital accounting? And there it's quite clear that the tendency among SMEs is that they want to be able to do most of it themselves and have maybe a little bit of external support, but only a very, very limited amount of SMEs want to outsource it completely, want to really go to a third party to do their natural capital accounting. They really want to do it themselves. And another thing is we are a Dutch company based in Amsterdam, so we can be blunt to our network. So we really asked them the question, how much do you want to pay for this? And another interesting figure there is that just about 70%, they don't want to pay for it at all. Around 40%, 35%, they want to pay up to 25,000, and only a very, very limited, only one respondent would be willing to pay more than that amount for it. Of course, this is all taking into account that most of them didn't even know it existed before completing the survey, but it does shed some light on what kind of strategy and you could take to move on to a next step, and what kind of services we should as a community develop to get these SMEs on board. So if you can go to, again, the next slide. Our main conclusions were that, and of course there's many more questions that I'm now skipping, but our main conclusions were that although sustainability is a main priority for SMEs, they are not yet familiar with natural capital accounting. But even after first learning about it, there's already a big bump in interest. So more people then know natural capital accounting actually want to be active on it once they know what it is. But third, they also like to be or to become self-reliant on this topic. And that means that we have to move to approaches that are simple to implement and affordable or free to use. And another thing that we found is that among some of the frontrunners on sustainability, especially among SMEs, they tend to focus not so much on accounting for natural capital, but on implementing actions that are good for natural capital. So one thing that I like to raise here is when we make policy for SMEs, should we tempt them to do more accounting, or should we tempt them to implement the right practices? I think that's one to remember for our discussion later. And then to my final slide, just some elements that we took out of the survey and how we use that to develop some practical guidance. First of all, I'd like to flag the session that we are organizing as part of the We Value Nature campaign tomorrow and next week, which is especially for companies that want to learn how to continue on their natural capital journey themselves through training. And this is specifically developed for the agri-food sector, so particularly relevant for all the agri-food companies. Another thing that we are doing now in the Netherlands is work together, a community of practice, where 13 SMEs are learning and sharing their knowledge and working together on how to create, as an SME, tangible impact in the landscapes that they are sourcing from. And then the final thing is that we developed a series of workshops where you can really easily get to the first steps of the natural capital protocol within an SME context, and where you can really capture what's the most important thing just by doing a series of 3 workshops. And we hope to use that to support SMEs to really become more self-reliant in their natural capital journeys.
Thank you very much, Dan, and great to also see that you already point us towards some solutions out there. So I'm sure we can pick up some of the elements you just raised in the discussions also later on in the group session. I'll now just briefly mention, and maybe echoing a bit some of the results that you just shared, some results of the survey that we ran at EU level on SMEs and natures that allowed us to identify some of the key barriers for SMEs to engage on these topics. So cost and fundings being a big one, lack of data and input, lack of understanding of the potential benefits, skills gaps also, which is an interesting one to flag, and a lack of case studies and practical application. And another element that we discussed or identified during that survey was what is the type of support that SMEs need to address these challenges. And I think I just want to flag the first two, the practical guidance and the practical tools, which we will try to start addressing today with this discussion and feeding into the design of guidance. Networking opportunities, hopefully we can start doing that again very soon so that we can actually meet and interact and exchange among peers. So basically, to close that first introduction, the objective today is to really take on the challenge that we introduced. The timing is right. There is a window of opportunity to address these topics, as we also saw in the number of participants in this workshop and the number of people that registered and flagged interest. And we'll now hear from a series of SMEs themselves that have demonstrated this level of interest and have demonstrated also the fact that business have much to gain of engaging on these topics. And we'll have now 3 business cases presented from 3 different countries in Europe, Spain, the Netherlands, and Germany. And we'll start the first one with Alberto Amador, who is the head of regulatory affairs and research and environment at AgroAmp in Spain. And I'll stop there, and Alberto, over to you. Just need to unmute yourself, Alberto. And yeah, excellent. You're still muted. Yeah, now it worked.
I'm muted. Okay.
Very good.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the invitation. Well, I'm going to start the presentation of AgroAmp, our business case, the company I am working. Well, who we are. AgroAmp was founded in 2001. Is an SME located in a rural area in Galicia, Spain, northwest of Spain, with a huge presence of dairy and meat farms. On the right, you can see the father of the current owners of the organization, several years ago, of course. And at that time, they realized that a new need was arising among farmers. That was the use of fertilization in a sustainable way to produce forage, mainly for maize and grasslands, and to reduce the abuse of inorganic fertilizers. And well, and that is how AgroAmp history begins. Please, next slide. Okay. What do we do? We make organic fertilizer, soil amendments based on biodegradable waste, such as manure, slurry, different sewage sludge from agri-food industry, etc. We use lime treatment instead of composting or anaerobic digestion, because the calcium have a second life in our product, because we have a problem with the aluminium toxicity in our soils in Galicia. On the right, you can see different certification about our sustainability, such as the ISO 40001, our assessment of our footprint organization that was registered in the Ministry of Spain, and of course IMAS. The last year we were nominated to the European Business Awards for the environment in the process category for small business, and 2 years ago we were nominated to EMAS Awards. Next slide, please. Well, what do we offer for farmers? We offer this fertilizer based on organic waste that can be used in different crops, either agrarian or forest crops. And as well, we offer support to farmers in different agrarian activities. For example, they contract us either to harvest their crops or maybe to make the resident in their farms. For the agri-food industry, we offer a sustainable alternative to organic waste management, because we give the organic waste a second chance as a product. Please, next slide. About our business case, we have several economic and social impacts. We have created direct jobs in a rural region, as you can see in my slide, and more indirect jobs, for example, in suppliers, maintenance services, local restaurants, and so. The second benefit is the more trust we have from our farmers and waste producers, the more customers we will get. As well, our fertilizing products are approved under the Spanish rule that is a guarantee of safety for our farmers. Thereby, it has allowed us to raise our turnover so far. That is important, the money. Finally, another benefit of our commitment to sustainable approach is that our insurance cost or financial guarantees are reduced, as well our options in calls for tenders are increased because these environmental accreditation are worthy in this type of calls. Please, next slide. About our environmental impact, we have several benefits. When we reduce the use of inorganic fertilizer, the environment impacts linked to this chemical and mineral fertilizer are reduced as well. For example, intensive energy use in case of nitrogen fertilizers or depletion of mineral rocks, phosphates in case of phosphorus fertilizers. Another benefit is that we are going to recover the nutrients, and we are going to avoiding that they are landfilled or drop out anywhere with the pollution risks associated. As well, low nutrient release in the organic fertilizer, thereby reducing losses because the organic matter needs time to mineralize and release those nutrients. The organic matter presented in our organic fertilizers enhances physical and chemical properties and microbiota in our soils. And the last is, well, the proximity. We're reducing the transport emission because it is a local production. Most of our farmers are close to a ground, less than 40 kilometers. Finally, well, we try to close the loop from waste to resource. We try to bring the biodegradable waste to the market again in a product form. Please, the next slide, please. Well, why to be more sustainable? Well, it's important for increasing the confidence of our customers, authorities, neighbors, general public, and finally in your organization. In case of the SMEs located in a rural region, it's very important the neighbors because they are going to be your first customers. Don't let your business behind because customers are looking for greenest products these days. Increases efficient use of your resources that reduce your cost as well, very important. About the sustainability, most of people only think in nature or wildlife when you ask on sustainability, but it's more than that. It's an integrated vision supported by 3 pillars: economic, social, and environment. Don't worry, go step by step from small sustainable measures to a complex sustainable management system. For example, regarding a small measure, for instance, our treatment plan is surrounded by batches. So we achieve 2 main objectives. The first is we are going to reduce our visual impact. And the other is that we are going to offer a habitat for small animals, such as birds, that they are our natural and sustainable pesticide. Finally, don't worry to ask for support. Sometimes the authorities release call for funding the implementation of sustainable plans in the SMEs, or public tools like carbon footprint calculators. Furthermore, you can get more information on sustainability from local consulting services, are cheaper than big consulting companies, of course. Public agrarian advisors, public platforms like AP Agri, where you can see many fact sheets to be more sustainable on the agri-food sector. For example, about soil health, the use of fertilizer, or something like that. Well, this is next slide, please. Was my last slide, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Alberto, for this very good presentation of your business case and clear message on that. Before we move on to Volkert and the other business case of EOSTA, is there any immediate short questions for Alberto? If not, we can come back to questions and answer after we run through the three business case. But okay. It was a very clear presentation, so thank you very much, Alberto.
Thank you.
So now moving to our second business case, I'm pleased to have Volkert Engelsman on the line from EOSTA, and I see, Volkert, you are actually sharing your slides, so perfect. All people on the call should be able to see your screen now, so just go ahead, please.
Jerome, super, thank you very much. Let me first share some exciting circumstantial observations with you. I'm sure you all have read the Great Reset written by Klaus Schwab, in which he addresses the new normal that consists of personal vitality, social vitality, and ecological vitality. The old normal was based on exploiting these three vitalities, which leads to pandemics. We can no longer afford that. That's very pound foolish, penny wise, pound foolish. And so it's interesting to see that there's that this topic of this threefold vitality is gaining momentum. Another exciting observation is, I'm sure you've seen that in the financial markets, where under leadership of pioneers like Mark Carney, the governor of the Bank of England, climate stress tests, biodiversity stress tests, but also sugar, fat, salt stress tests, health stress tests are being piloted in order to address financial risks related to sustainability challenges. So sustainability seems to be breaking out of its green bubble and trickling down into the DNA of the financial sector, into the DNA of the RAROCs, the risk-adjusted return on capital. Another exciting thing is we're in the middle of elections here in Holland. And I don't know about the other member states in Europe, but there seems to be a growing support for a meat tax to make sure that we create a more level playing field in which the polluter no longer gets away with a competitive advantage. So shifting from animal-based protein to plant-based protein seems to be gaining momentum as well. Finally, one example in the retail market. This is Penny, a large supermarket chain in Germany owned by Rewe, who simply share the 2.79 minced meat price and at the same time publishing the 7.62 real price if you would factor in all the externalities related to just natural capital. Social capital is not even included here. To finish with a few examples, what we do as an SME is we have the sustainability flower that we apply to our entire supply chain on a per product basis. We apply 4 M's. We measure the impact. We manage the impact, basically managing the delta between where we are and where we want to be. We market the impact in clever marketing and communication campaigns. And finally, we monetize the impact by wherever possible. Not because we think you can monetize natural and social capital, but what you can do is monetize the repair costs. and monetize what would be needed to repair the damage you did to natural and social capital. And I agree with, I think it was Dan or Lars who mentioned SMEs may be not so interested in accounting or accountability, but more into applying best practices, implementing practices. And I totally agree with that. Not that accounting is not important. And I would like to finish with a few examples of how we implement in a very practical way the monetized impact on natural, social and human capital. First of all, on a governance level, we do not only report in this company to a financial shareholder, but also to a natural and social capital shareholder who have no skin in the game, so to speak, no financial skin in the game, but they do have social and natural capital skin in the game. And I think that's part of the new normal. The next thing we do is that we say loud and clear in the market that organic is not too expensive, conventional is too cheap, as long as in this race to the bottom for the lowest price, natural and social capital are ignored. If you would include these costs, then you would find out that we're losing 30 soccer fields per minute as a result of intensive farming. This is how we communicate this in the market: buy these organic avocados and save 6 cubic meters of fertile soil. We do the same with clean water and saving water. We do the same with greenhouse gases, and we do the same with health. So together with EY, but also the Capitals Coalition and other partners, we have piloted this true cost accounting idea on a per hectare basis, on a per kilo basis, and on a profit and loss account basis. And by cooperating with stakeholders like TEEB or FAO or WHO, and calculated by EY, the financial auditor, we, for instance, concluded that organic apples are 19 cents per kilo healthier than conventional apples, simply because of lack of pesticides. And that relates to so buy organic apples and save 27 sick days per hectare per year. I think it is important, if you want to communicate this, not just to your shareholders, but also to your market partners, it is important to visualize these things. Otherwise, it becomes quickly quite theoretical and abstract. And we've started to address social indicators, which are more difficult to monetize as well, by calculating the living wage gap, which we then highlight at point of sale together with, hang on, I'm going to the wrong way here. Yeah, by running campaigns with retailers, highlighting the living wage gap, and simply saying you can buy organic avocados or you can buy organic avocados for which the farm workers have received a living income or living wage. Even if there is no standard yet, even if there is no harmonization yet, which is dramatically quickly needed. And thanks for all the pioneering to the coalition, natural and social capital coalitions for their pioneering work. A big compliment, but we need to harmonize these things as well. So we talk about the same benchmarks. Finally, Jerome, we believe in reflection, and that's why we installed little mirrors in the shopping carts of our customers so they can think about who they are and what the hell they want with this planet and with their fellow citizens on this planet. And we don't shy away from a little bit of activism by putting the conventional grapes together with the bathroom cleaning agents because poison belongs to poison. And on a good day, we also like to highlight the good stuff, not only the naughty stuff, by talking about food fixes and offering food as a proactive way of addressing health issues. by teaming up with nutritionists and doctors to make sure that health is not about absence of disease and pills, but health actually starts with implementing the externalized costs and looking at the proactive healthcare of food, and particularly organic food. Thank you very much. Jerome, back to you.
Thank you very much, Volker, to talk us through some of your interesting communication, but also some very practical elements that you've put in place. So I noted down the 4Ms approach, the fact that you are working to implementing practices rather than accounting when not available yet, but also this true cost accounting element you mentioned and the role of partners. So great to see all that. Let me reshare my screen so that we can continue on. Yeah, there you go. You should now all see my screen. Can you confirm, Volker? I think that should be working. And just to keeping the time in mind, we'll come back to a quick round of Q&A after the third presentation, which is now by Patrick Trochler. So thank you very much, Volker. Patrick joined us from Germany this time, and we'll talk about AlpGold, although he's actually working with the Lake Constance Foundation, but has been doing strong partnership with the company AlpGold in the last year. So over to you, Patrick.
Thank you, Jerome. So this presentation is about how the company AlpGold wants to create more biodiversity through the production of durum wheat in southern Germany. My name is Patrick Trochler. I'm working for Lake Constance Foundation, so I'm doing this presentation on behalf of AlpGold today. So the first slide, please. Yeah, first of all, I want to present you the company. AlpGold is a family business in southern Germany between Lake Constance and Stuttgart, and they produce pasta. They have about 200 employees in the little town of Trochelfingen. The daily production is about 60 tons of pasta every day. And they are, yeah, let's say a premium pasta producer in Germany. They have different kinds of pasta and some special pasta and also an organic product range. Very special thing is that AlpGold has a very close relationship to their customers. So they have a known customer center where you can visit the pasta production directly. There's a huge garden around it with different herbs and also some environmental capacity building opportunities. And of course, they offer a restaurant, a market, even a cooking studio. So they really try to keep their customers close to the brand AlpGold. And just to the next slide, then we also see the factory in southern Germany, in Trochelfingen, where the pasta from AlpGold is produced. So next slide, please. AlpGold is involved very strongly in biodiversity for many years. So biodiversity is an important element of their sustainability policy and the company's policy in general. They started, even with us as Lake Constance Foundation, doing a biodiversity check some years ago, just to get conscious of their relationship to this issue, biodiversity, and where they can act and promote biodiversity in the range of their company. They are involved in biodiversity-oriented premises. So you can see here the figures, and they try to progress step by step and to install more and more habitats and little or larger biotopes on their premise. Or their different premises, yes. They are also involved strongly in communication regarding biodiversity. For example, they organized a video competition, I think 2 or 3 years ago, and there were some very interesting and very special video contributions then on the issue of biodiversity. And then last but not least, that's what I want to present you today, is this biodiversity project in durum wheat cultivation, because durum wheat is the main commodity of Alpgold. If you produce pasta, then you need durum wheat. We started this project. It's a joint project with Alpgold, then the Constance Foundation as an environmental NGO, and with the IFAB Institute. They are experts in agrobiology and in biodiversity monitoring. We started this project in 2018, and we visited some of the suppliers, some of the farms that are producing durum wheat for Alpgold, and we learned in this first year a lot on durum production. We saw also that in southern Germany there is no high need to install new landscape elements. And we learned a lot on durum production, because durum is not so common in southern Germany. And we learned that it's a very sensitive crop in terms of crop management, in terms of quality, and also in terms of the harvesting season. So our first idea was that we can directly integrate biodiversity supporting measures in the durum production, but we learned that biodiversity measures, they should be detached, because the farmers were not able or were not ready to change their way of durum production in a more biodiversity friendly way. So we rethought our first concept, and then we changed that, and we came to 4 main principles. Next slide, please. So the aim of the project is clear. We want to create an added value, not only through regionality, but also through more biodiversity. And the first principle we defined is, so we switched from a large set of different biodiversity measures. We switched to only 2 high-level biodiversity measures. So we focused the whole project on 2 measures, and one is extensive cropland, so a reduction of the seed density, no use of pesticides, a very strongly reduced fertilizer use, and also a diverse and cereal-based crop rotation. And the other high-level biodiversity measure is that we want the farmers to install or to implement high-quality perennial flower strips in a certain way. So they seed it, and then after 1 year, they reseed half of this area. So we came into a kind of rotation on the field. And so we have two ways of offering flowering areas to the insects, with the new seeds and the perennial seeds. And of course, on these fields, there is no use of pesticides or fertilizers. So we focused on these 2 measures, not on a set of measures. The next principle is very important. So we defined the scope. So we have the 2 measures, and the principle number 2 is that these 2 biodiversity measures must be implemented on an area that is equivalent to 10% of the contractually fixed durum area with Alpgold. So if you have a farmer that is producing 20 hectares of durum for Alpgold, those 20 hectares of durum trigger 2 hectares of biodiversity area. So we directly linked the production or the implementation of biodiversity measures to the amount of durum production in the farm. The next slide, yes. So the third principle is that we have these clear rules, the 2 measures, and 10% of the durum area, but we offered a certain amount of flexibility for the farmers when they implement these 2 measures. So they decide themselves about the distribution of the 2 measures in their farm. But we had a minimum of implementation of 5% of this extensive arable land, because we think this is the most valuable measure, and we want them to do it at least on 5% of their durum area. But they are flexible if they want to implement it in 5% to 5%, or 6% to 4%, or 7% to 3%, so they can really implement it in their farm in the way that is convenient to them. And then the last principle, AlpGold pays for this quality. So they're given a clear incentive to the suppliers. They are paying farmers, they pay a quality bonus of 60 euros per hectare of durum wheat. So there's not only we want you to do this and to that because our customers are expecting more biodiversity, but they are also, there's a clear incentive for the farmers, and it seems to us that it's a quite attractive incentive. Next slide, please. So we developed this new concept. We had some more farm visits, so we have pilot farms now, and now from the 2021 sowing season, so right beginning in this autumn, these measures that I presented to you, they will become obligatory. So AlpGold will do new contracts with all their suppliers, with all their farmers producing durum, and from that on, all farmers have to contribute to the durum, to the biodiversity with 10% of their durum area for AlpGold. So this is obligatory. I think this is very important, and this is a big success. So we have already produced an information brochure for the farmers, and it has been sent out in the last weeks. We are preparing now information and demonstration events for the farmers, and in April and May, and hopefully we can do it out on the field. If not, we will do it like this here today. And another important incentive for the farmers is normally they have only 1-year contracts, but AlpGold is now offering at longer contract periods, at least 3 years. And the Constance Foundation and also our partner IFAB Institute, they will be part of this project also in the next year. So we'll advise the farmers and giving them feedback and support them to find the right fields. And if there are problems in implementation, we will they can call us and we can give advice. And very important too, IFAB is also responsible for the biodiversity monitoring. So we're talking about 100 farms and 1,500 hectares of durum, so 150 hectares of biodiversity areas. So we cannot monitor all these fields, but at least some of samples. So IFAB has developed a biodiversity monitoring concept and will implement this in the next years. To close my presentation, I think that the key lessons learned from this project concept, because we're just starting the implementation, is from my point of view, as I'm working for Lake Constance Foundation, okay, collaborate with NGOs as an SME. I think it's very important to bring in this biodiversity or this ecological competence, and also the competence and the expertise how to address farmers with this issue of biodiversity. Then another success or key point for success is invest in a long-term project in partnership. So I think if you want to have success stories on biodiversity, then you need time and patience, because biodiversity is not happening from one moment to another, but you need some years just to go step by step and to develop the habitats and the biotopes, and then also hopefully to have higher numbers of different species. And another, even for me, the key success factor in this project is the incentive for the farmers. You have to motivate them by incentives, if possible by money, but also by supporting them with the longer contracts, or also by a good communication, just to bring in then not only as suppliers, but as partners of an SME like AlpGold is. And the last one, for me, another lessons learned is also from other projects we have done in the past, is you have to prove your biodiversity performance. Monitoring is key for communication, but also for adjusting measures in the project then. And yeah, to finish that, I think Alpgold is doing here a very good job. We are very happy to collaborate with them. And hopefully this project contributes to charge the brand of Alpgold company with more sustainability, to make this brand and the pasta more unique. And hopefully the consumers will buy more Alpgold pasta in the future. So thank you very much for the opportunity to present this project.
Thank you very much, Patrick, and also thank you for flagging these key lessons learned and the one cooperation which really comes out strongly from the story you just told us. So we're running a bit behind on time, but I still have a couple of minutes for any Q&A on these three great examples from across Europe. So if anyone has a question, you can put it down in the chat or raise your hand and just voice the question. Yeah, a question from Jan. Go ahead, Jan.
Hello. A question to Volkert. He mentioned this example from Penny, I think from the German company, comparing the price that they are charging, asking customers to pay with the price that internalizes externalities. So my question was, can we, does EOSTA consider customers more as a solution to this endeavor to incorporate externalities in the price, or more as a barrier, seeing the marketing they're doing around this towards their customers? And a question to Patrick, I think from Lake Constance, is a more technical question, but is species richness also used as an indicator to incentivize farmers? Kind of a based price incentive based on diversity. Thank you.
Thanks, Jan. So Volkert, I saw you switched on your camera, so go ahead first.
Thank you, Jan, for the question. If I understand you well, do we perceive the consumer a barrier or a challenge or an ally in this? I think he's certainly not a barrier. He is more of a victim, I think, lured into this strange, perverse profit definition that parasitizes on his health and the ecological health and social health by not telling the entire truth, by not sharing the entire cost picture with him or her. So I think he's or she is certainly part of the solution by putting his or her money where her mouth is and her health is, and that is not something you can expect from all customers. I think change has never come from a following majority, but also always from a trend-setting minority. And the organic consumer and the consumer who becomes more of a vegan and who is more interested, not as a citizen only, but also as a consumer in his or her health and in the environment and in fair working conditions, is growing. And whilst that is still a trend-setting minority, it is a growing minority, and that is where leadership starts. Finally, it's not just the consumer we need here. We need to activate the financial sector, politicians, policy, research, the capitals coalitions who pioneer and prototype this new normal. In this orchestra, the consumer plays an important, but certainly not the only role. I hope that is some answer to your question, Jan.
Thank you. I think it is. At least
thank you.
Answers quite well. So thank you. Patrick, maybe very quickly on the other more technical question, and then we... Yeah, go ahead, Patrick.
Thank you, Jan, for the question. We thought about that. But in the end, the situation in the different landscapes the farmers are in southern Germany, there's a big difference between the species richness. So this is not a good indicator to to pay them. So the incentive is for the implementation, so for the biodiversity input, but so far we cannot pay the output, so the real species richness, perhaps in some years. But in the end, I think there are too many factors that influence the species richness, the climate change, the landscape, the cultural landscapes that are different and stuff like that. So we only pay, or AlpGold only pays the offer of the farmers to take some of their fields and to create more biodiversity.
Thank you very much, Patrick. And I see there are a few more questions, but I suggest we move on to the interactive part, and I think there will be a chance to raise some of these also in the discussion during these group sessions. So thank you very much to Alberto, Volker, and Patrick for their very good presentation and providing a lot of insights and basis to discuss further. So what we'll be doing now in this part of the workshop focusing on solutions is actually asking you to intervene and take an active role. We will, in a moment, and you don't have to do anything, break into 3 different groups. In each of these groups, we'll discuss first a bit more on the challenges faced by SMEs, but spend most of the time focusing on practical solutions. And we really encourage you to participate via this mural board that we will be using and that you'll be introduced to, but also to use the chat to share links and share existing reports, documentation that you have been using or that you know others have been using or that you are aware of. Practically, and then we will then come back and report back on the most relevant solution flagged in each group session and talk a bit about next steps and potential solutions already existing. In a moment, you'll be, as I said, automatically brought into a group. We'll be using a mural board. For the ones who don't know mural, we'll have a short intro, but it's basically like working all together in the group on a big PowerPoint presentation, and you'll be able to intervene and provide insights and write elements on the screen. So you'll receive in each group a link that you put into your browser. It will bring you into this large PowerPoint where you'll be introduced to the tool. We'll then talk, as you saw on the right hand of my screen there, on challenges for a few minutes, and then really focus on opportunities and solutions. We are running a bit behind on time, so we'll take 30 minutes for this group discussion, so we have sufficient time to discuss that and then come back all together in this main room. So Jana, I think you can split us in groups and I'll see you back all in the main room in 30 minutes. Hello, everybody. I think we are now all back in the main room. So thank you very much for your time and for joining this group. I'll progress there you go to the. So thank you all for your input and the discussion in the group. I hope it worked well and you had the time to work through most of the mural board. We'll now enter. But before we go into the way forward, we'll ask representatives from each group to mention only one of the solutions that were identified as the most salient ones to some of the challenges identified. So in group 1, I don't know who wants to take the lead. Very shortly, 30 seconds to
we had a volunteer, so please, team, if you want to share your insights.
Yeah, absolutely, no problem. Thanks, Thibault. So I'm going to pick one that was written down by Jude from the Impact Institute. And so one of the key things that came out of our discussions was that there does seem to be a lack of resources for SMEs. And Jude's input was that there are a lot of open source methodologies available from obviously us. I work at the Capitals Coalition, but also ISO, Food Civi, and TEEB, and it relates to one of the solutions to one of the other problems as well around standardization and being part of alliances and coalitions and groups of organizations to be able to learn from each other and help further the development and thinking around some of these topics as well.
Thank you, Tim. That certainly resonates with a lot of the discussion in your group as well. Group number 2, someone to share the most salient solution?
I can probably do that. We had a good discussion. I must say we've struggled a little bit with the tool, but there's certainly a lot of input. Thanks for everybody for sharing this input, and we'll take the time to process that rich information that you've shared. One idea that came up actually from Martin. Creating a community of practice with farmers. We've seen that also with the financial sector being a success. So why not transposing that to the food and agri-food sector? And one, I think, good idea too, around the business case, linking food and biodiversity. We need to show in the business case that also working with the diversity of vegetable species can be or can bring benefit in terms of nutritional achievements, and I think this should be stressed more in the business case, according to Mario.
Thank you, Jan, for sharing that. Very useful. I guess in our group, I'll take the floor on that. I'll just focus on one. We echoed a lot of things. We mentioned community of practice as well, etc. But maybe one element that also came out strongly was the build up a standard set of indicators and associated measures that SMEs can take and build that up at sectoral, subsectoral level, so that each SME don't have to reinvent the wheel, but has available at hand concrete examples of measures and associated indicators to track progress and impact that they can just use and replicate. So a lot of good thoughts out there and a lot to build on. Let me share my screen again as we move on to the last part of the workshop today, which is focusing on the way forward. And I think one solution that will certainly be very interesting to many, given what we heard in the group discussion, is actually an introduction to the Sme Climate Hub by Majda Dabagi, who is Director of Clean Growth at the International Chamber of Commerce. Majda, over to you to introduce us to that tool or platform.
Great. Thank you so much, Jerome. And thanks to everyone for this really insightful and interesting couple of hours. Absolutely. I think that I hope anyways that the SME Climate Hub will help to provide some ideas of how we can move forward in terms of getting small businesses to take action on biodiversity. The SME Climate Hub is an initiative that we launched in September last year with the mission to mobilize and support small businesses across the globe to take climate action, also connecting it to building business resilience and to gaining a competitive advantage. And we know that, we can go to the next slide. We know that over 90% of small businesses 90% of business worldwide are small businesses. They employ over 2 billion people. And we also know that through this pandemic that those small businesses that had plans to help them weather external threats fared better than those who didn't have any kind of disaster relief plan. And we also know that 40 to 60% of businesses, small businesses that closed due to a severe weather event never reopen. So we've tried to make the business case for why it's important for small businesses to take action on climate and build business resilience very clear. And I think we can do the same with biodiversity. Here, I think a lot of, we wanted to just pull out what are the roadblocks to SMEs taking action. I think you've identified them all throughout the session today. They're really the same for biodiversity and for climate. So limited resources, lack of know-how, and misaligned incentives. So we can go to the next slide. And so what we've tried to do is bring together a platform, a one-stop shop that would help to address all of these issues. So we And actually, we can go to the next slide and then I'll show you how it works. And the next one again. And again, thanks. So the way that it works is we have a commitment, a robust commitment, just to go back to Martin's initial comments, that is simple. It's to have emissions by 2030, achieve net zero by 2050, and also report on an annual basis. The commitment itself has a stamp of approval of the UN Race to Zero team, so it meets the minimum criteria. So we know that it is robust, but it is very simple. And the form itself takes about a minute to complete. And then we have a toolbox where small businesses can access free tools and also a series of incentives. The incentives that we have in place right now are really around recognition from the UN, but also recognition from large supply chain leaders that are committed to making climate action a procurement criteria. And we are working on the financial and policy incentives so that those are very clear on the platform. So we can go to the next slide. And I think we can just kind of skip through these. It goes into a little bit more detail on what the commitment looks like. We can go to the next couple of slides here. I'll just flick through real quick so you can see what it looks like. On the tools, I think it is important to mention that what we've done for the tools library is we worked with the University of Oxford. We reviewed over 500 tools with University of Oxford, but also with a community of small businesses to select the tools that are most aligned with science, but that are also accessible to small business. And 99% of the tools are free to use, and they're all available to the public, regardless of whether they've made the commitment or not. But I think that the toolbox, and this was raised earlier in the conversation, just having one place where you can go and you know that you can rely on the tools is really helpful, because there is so much information, so many open source tools everywhere. It is really hard for small business to know where to start. So hopefully this helps. We can skip this slide. And this is just what the toolbox looks like, so you can get a bit of a visual. And I've mentioned the incentives here, and we can go to the next slide again. We have over 700 small businesses now who have committed. This is really just from the start of January, I'd say, mostly, because we got the tools up in December, and having the solutions, not just a commitment platform, was really essential, I think, to start mobilizing small businesses. So we'll try to grow that number to hundreds of thousands by COP26 at the end of the year. So we can go to the next slide. There's some testimonials from some of the small businesses, which I'm sure we can share all these slides with you, but I'm just mindful of the time for everyone. And that's it, really. I think just the one last thing I wanted to mention was of the importance of working with the supply chain leaders, so the big corporates, multinationals with lots of SME suppliers, as well as working with SMEs directly from the ground up, the importance of working with trade associations, with chambers of commerce, with various partner organizations, and also corporates or financial institutions, insurance companies that have access to SMEs directly. And it's just about a kind of coming together as a global community to really provide the support for small businesses, because ultimately I think every small business really wants to do well, but they often don't know where to start. And so our job is to ensure that there is support and incentives and that we are kind of working hand in hand, and that everyone is doing the best, their part and the best that they can.
Thank you very much, Majda, for that rapid introduction to the SME Climate Hub. We'll of course be sharing all the slides and the link so that people can explore themselves. Before we go to the last few slides from my side, is there any immediate question for Majda? I know Majda has to go to another call shortly, so if there's anything to raise your hand or put a message in the chat box now. Yeah, I see here. Question to Magda is the fact that the logo of the SME Climate Hub already has a leaf in its token that this hub will develop towards a hub for nature too. So I think it's a hint from Martin Locke at the Capitals Coalition. Immediate answers to that, Majda?
I really hope so. I think that biodiversity and climate are so interrelated. I'd really like to see the hub develop into a more robust offering, but we did have to start somewhere. If anyone on the call actually has any tools that they'd like to share on the platform, please do share those with us, and I think that would be a really good way of getting started. So I've just shared the link to the SME Climate Hub in the chat as well. So and I'll put in my email as well in case anyone wants to connect with me afterwards.
Thank you very much, Majda. That's all very good, and I'm glad you also pointed towards moving towards concrete steps, because this is what we want to do next. So I'm pleased to say that we will be launching a new working group under the European Business and Biodiversity platform, together with the Capitals Coalition, on basically addressing the challenge that we talked about today and developing these guidance. So what we want to do is have a small group of SMEs or organization working with SMEs to basically support the development of the guidance, but in a kind of light touch way. Key role would be to provide constructive feedback on the development of the guide for SMEs at different key moments, and I'll show a timeline in the next slide. The group will probably convene only once online to actually discuss all together, or maybe twice at the very beginning and at the end, and then it will more be in terms of providing initial feedback at the very start to make sure the structure matches what needs are of SMEs, and also towards the end, once the guide is drafted, to make sure it uses the right language and address the SME community at the right level, as the focus of this workshop is. The guide also will initially be on SMEs from the agri-food sector, but potentially, if that works well, it could be also expanded to other sectors in the next period or so, but to be seen. So this is what we have in mind a little bit in terms of the planning for that working group. So launch now, basically, an expression of interest. It would be great if you can let us know if you want to get involved before the end of the 10-day challenge, of the We Value Nature 10-day challenge. So that's next Wednesday. Just drop us an email or flag your interest in the chat box. We will also be resending a kind of call for expression of interest email to all the participants of the workshop today in the coming days. And the plan is to then use the next month and rest of the year to develop the guide together with the working group, with some initial scoping work in April, and then we do some work on our side in actually developing the guidance, and then during the summer some consultation and revision, so we can finalize and publish the guide in autumn. So that's exciting journey ahead, and I think a quite challenging one, but with the group we have and the enthusiasm we have on the topic, I'm sure we can result in a great output. What to say next? I think continuing on in these elements of concrete steps that you can take. There is a series of other events and sessions during We Value Nature 10-day challenge that are specifically focusing on food and agri-food or food and beverage sector. So as we mentioned already, Nature Squared has teamed up with the We Value Nature team to organize 2 sessions of, I think it's the same training on food and beverage sector specifically, and what are the key steps to conduct a first natural capital assessment. So that will be very hands-on and practical training. The Capitals Coalition is organizing a session links to TIB agri-food for business on transforming the food system. So not an SME focus only, but more broader on that work. There is then a session not organized as part of the We Value Nature, but organized by SME United, which is broader than just nature and biodiversity, but focusing on how to finance the greening of your food chain, specifically dedicated to SMEs. And SME United has been working with different partners on the EU Life program on the development of a leaflet on this specific topic. So we mentioned that funding and finance was one of the key obstacles. Well, here is an initial answer to that challenge, and will be, once the leaflet is actually published, we'll be sharing that with participants and via the website of the European Business and Biodiversity platform. And then I think on the last day of the We Value Nature challenge, there is a session on redefining value to build back better and change the food system, against organized by the Capitals Coalition. So a lot of opportunities to engage further on these topics. So the last thing to mention in terms of engaging further, the We Value Nature team has set up a Capitals community where we can discuss further. So we as organizer will be logging into that platform after this event in case you want to share further elements or engage with peers as part of the We Value Nature 10-day challenge. This is the place to do that, and you'll see there is a lot of topics being discussed there that you can engage and discuss with other. We also want to hear your feedback, so we'll be circulating a link to a feedback survey, but the link is there and quite straightforward, and you will be sharing the slides, so you can use that as well. So lot of next steps in the pipeline, and this brings us to an end. So unless there is anyone that wants to raise a question or a final remark, let me thank you all for your participation in today's workshop. We're very pleased to have you all on the line, and we've certainly collected a lot of insights, and hopefully you too, and have a strong basis to continue our work on this challenging but much needed topic to be addressed. Thank you all, and I wish you a good end of the day and a good end of the 10 days of challenge for We Value Nature. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.